The rebuild / cleaning of a Kehin FCR. This one's out of a KX 250F. You're gonna need an 8mm and a 6mm, small and a big flathead, and then a Phillips head screwdriver. I'm gonna start off by taking off these 4 Phillips head bowl screws. The screws undone, you can pull the bowl off, and then undo the idle screw. Spring and then the little washer that's on the end. Small to push the pin out of the float, and then the float should pull right up along with the needle. And then the needle valve, make sure that the needle comes out with it and then you don't lose it. Use an 8mm to take out the main jet.
6mm.
Yeah, 6mm. And then you're gonna use an 8mm to take out the emulsion tube. The plastic piece up, and you got to use a small flathead to remove this jet. I'm not sure of the name. And the next one right there. And you should just be able to. And one thing that's important, you should go through all your jets and look through them, hold them up to the light. Make sure you can see light and there's no debris blocking. If there is, blow it out with some carb cleaner. Fuel and air screw. It should be 1 1/4 turns out for this model. And then you should just be able to knock it out. And then be careful, there's a screw. Make sure that screw comes out with it. Yeah, spring. Use a Phillips head to remove the fuel inlet tube. Alright, so we had to use a little bit of heat and pry on it, but pulls right out.
That is so crusty.
Yeah. There's 3 seals on there. Make sure they're not ripped or cracked or anything. You can use a 14mm to unscrew the choke lever. And the choke should just pull straight up after. Yep. Now you can use a T25 to undo the throttle position sensor. There's just 1 screw. And it should just pull straight up. Yep. So we couldn't find the right Allen size, so we're just gonna use a T15 to remove the top slide plate. There's 2 screws. And then the plate will just pull straight off. Now we're going to use a Phillips head to remove the slide bracket off the rotating assembly. So after that's unscrewed, the slide, you should rotate the bracket and the slide, you could just pull out straight up. Be careful of the plate, the vacuum plate, and the wheels on the slide. They'll fall off and go everywhere. Right now you're gonna pull the rotating assembly straight out. Be careful, there's a nylon and a metal washer right there. You don't want to lose. You're gonna have to rotate it a little bit, get the spring popped out, and then it should pull straight out once you get the spring unclipped.
The washers.
Yeah, don't lose the washers.
Okay.
And then you can, looks like that. Then you can pull that bracket out and your washers.
That's fine.
Turn it upside down. There's the middle washer.
That's both.
Oh, that's both of them? Yep. And then you can pull their spring out. Just twist it and pull it out. Now you can use a very small T8 to undo the 2 mid-body screws. They're really small, so make sure not to lose them. Alright, another thing that's really important, there's a lot of small jets and screws in this carb. You gotta make sure you got a clean area to keep everything, so you don't want it on the floor. And then also, clean place to keep all your parts. Alright, after you finally find the right bit, then you can get these 4 screws out, holding the mid body on. No big deal. These are really easy to strip out, so be careful. Alright, after you pull these 4 little screws, we struggled, but finally got them out. Then the mid body, you should be able to crack loose and pull straight off. And then there should be all these seals. Make sure you got all those. Then you can pull the tower straight off. And then we're just going through the carb to check it out, but looks like this one had already been rebuilt. So you just want to inspect these seals, make sure they're not cracked. Clean them off. This one, they're sandwiched, but that's normal because when you screw it together, they sandwich, and they're supposed to do that. Alright, so then there's an air jet right there. You're gonna unscrew that and then knock it out. And make sure it's clear and then you can see through it, which you can. And then you can go ahead and put it back in. Alright, and now for the accelerator pump line, to get it off, just very lightly clamp onto it with some vice grips. And push on this black piece and just pull. That ball will just pop right out of the plastic. So, this is the ultrasonic cleaner I got. I use Simple Green, 20% Simple Green and 80% water. I found that Simple Green works the best. I just got this on Amazon. It was about $40. I'll put a link in the description. But you just let it heat up, and then you just set the carb body right in there, along with anything else that you want to, smaller pieces, and yep. All right, so I set it for 65 degrees. It's on 42 degrees right now, and then 30 minutes, and then you just press go. All right, so now while we wait for the carburetor and the ultrasonic cleaner, we're gonna disassemble the accelerator pump. There's 3 Phillips head on the bottom of the carburetor bowl. And then be careful, there's a spring when you pull it off. You don't want those to go flying. and this should just pull right off. There's the diaphragm, the spring, and the seal right there, and then little seal right there. Something to check on these diaphragms. This is what helps pump gas, so you need to make sure that it's sealing good and there's no cracks and it's not frail. If it's frail, you need to replace that. Alright, so while we wait for these parts in the cleaner, since we don't have anything else to do in the carb right now, I'm going to show y'all my bike. It's an 01 YZ250F, just got it a few weeks ago. Yeah, motor's out right now. Right here. It's not blown up. It was running a few days ago, but whoever rebuilt it either put some cheap gaskets in it or they just reused the old gaskets. So I'll show you all the base gasket. Base gasket leaking really bad. As you can see, the cylinder's good. No cross hatching, no scores, nicks. Here's the head. Head looks in good shape. I did a seal test on the valves. They're good. And then another reason I tore it down was because I kept getting coolant in the oil. Oil kept milky, so I assumed it was a head gasket, and I'm pretty sure I was right. It's blown out. And when I took it apart, there was water in there. So I'm also, while I'm there, replacing this side gasket and also the stator cover gasket. So I'll be making a separate video when I'm putting this together. But yeah. So we took the carb out. It wasn't in for the full 30 minutes. It wasn't too dirty to begin with, so it didn't need too long. So we're gonna throw the mid body in. These seals, we're not gonna leave it in for too long because we don't want to tear up these seals, but so next day, we had the carb run through the ultrasonic cleaner. We're gonna now start assembling it. We're gonna start with the tower on the mid body, and then you're gonna want to line up the little hole with that one right there. And there's two T8s holding it on. Alright, now once you got that screwed on, and before we reassemble the mid body onto the carb body, then you gotta check out all the gaskets and seals. Make sure there's no cracks and that they're all there. There should be two on these little holes sticking out too. Now before we assemble the mid body onto the main body of the carb, I'm gonna look at these 4 seals. They should go up to these holes, and then these lines go in that hole. You want to make sure that this seal is mated up with this surface right there. So it should go on just like this, and there's 4 screws, and we got new screws because our old ones were stripped out, so these are Phillips instead of the Torx. Alright, so this is the vacuum plate and this is the slide. You want to make sure all your 4 wheels are on because those come off real easy. And you want to make sure that your seal is on this plate. It goes around there. And then there's a hole, and that should face down towards the needle. And the seal goes onto it like that. And then you just push it into there. And it should be pushed up against that. And then you can drop it down in the carburetor. And then you have to make sure the needle goes in there and down there. Alright, another thing, I'm gonna raise that slide up. You can do this before, but we just forgot to. And those little things push straight into there. And then the slide should just drop right down. Alright, so the next step is we're gonna take the rotating assembly, put a little bit of oil or grease on there, and then our spring's gonna go on with the longer end hooking onto that. And then you're gonna need your 2 washers, nylon and a metal washer. And then you're gonna push this rod through the bearing, and then that should pass through these. And you're gonna put your washers right there, and then push it all the way through. And it's kind of hard too, but your spring, that little notch, will catch onto that. So you put that in, load the spring around while holding the power valve arm back. So first we're gonna push it in a little bit. We're gonna put the metal washer on first, then the nylon. Then we're gonna push it through this through the slide arm. So once you have that pushed through the bracket, this spring is gonna line up with that notch right there, just like that. And you gotta lift this up while it pushes through. Okay, and then we can pull this around, lift up that power valve arm, and then it should seat right in there. And then it's very important that this is resting on that, so that when it turns, it opens up that. You have your rotating assembly all pushed in, then you want to make sure that the holes are lined up on the bracket for the slide, and then the arm that goes through. And then you can put 1 Phillips that goes in there. And then before you put the cover on, and you want to just check, pull it all the way up, make sure it doesn't stick. Now we're going to use our T15 Torx to put on the plate, covering plate. And then you want to make sure that your seal is on and push down in the groove. If you need to, you can put a little bit of grease on it to keep it stuck in. Alright, now you're going to need your throttle position sensor and a
T25.
T25. And then you want to make sure you line those up by putting it on, and then you can just twist it and push it down to seat it in there. And then put it halfway on the adjustment, and then snug your bolt in. So now we can use our 14mm to screw on the choke. Right here is the hot start. On our bike, the hot start is on the handlebar. On some bikes, the hot start is just right on the carb. But that's hot start, that's choke. So we're gonna screw it into this one, and I put a little bit of oil on it just to lube it up. And you can snug it tight. You don't want this too tight because there's plastic threads. And then you just want to make sure it pulls up and down nice. So using a Phillips, now we can put our fuel inlet in this hole, and then screw it goes right there. You're gonna make sure that you have all 3 seals and they're not cracked. And then I put a little bit of oil just to keep the seals nice. And that pushes straight in. It doesn't matter what position it's in because it can turn. So now we're gonna flip the carb over, and we're gonna start putting in all our jets. The first jet we're gonna put in is this little short one right there. It's gonna go right in that hole. These jets strip out really easy, so be careful. Then we can use our, that one, yeah. And that one, the tall one, goes in the top hole right there. Then we can set the plastic piece on. Where's that at? Before we put on the emulsion tube. Alright. Then you're gonna use an 8mm. Another
We'll do that later.
yeah. Then you can use an 8mm for the emulsion tube. It's a big long one. And the main jet goes right over that. And now the fuel and air screw. There should be a small spring that goes on it right there. Yep. And it goes straight in this hole. You want to screw that in all the way till it bottoms out, and then you want to check your owner's manual, but for this bike it says a 1 1/4 turns out. And you can always adjust it if your bike's running rich or lean.
One.
Alright. Now we can assemble the float bowl and the needle. The needle just slides right on that tab, just like that. And then the needle goes in that hole. Once it's seated, then you can put the needle through. Now once we have all our jets in, we can put the bowl on. You want to make sure your seal's in, and if you need to, put a little bit of grease on it to hold it in.
This rod lines up right with that angled piece. It'll slide right down there.
Got to move it around to get the little rod to seat in there.
There we go. Cool.
And then you can put in all three except this one. We have to put our idle screw in. Alright, now we're going to put the idle screw in. You're going to need your spring and the washer. The washer goes on first, and the spring. And then it threads in down here. And then you just want it barely pushing up on the slide like that. Then you want to come over here, push that on, push it down, and then put your last screw in. Just like that. Alright, now we can put our accelerator pump arm in. This is the actuator. You want to have the ball end going first. Push it in like this, and then you're going to hold like that, and then you just get something like a screwdriver. You gotta put it in until you hear it pop. See it in there. Just like that. It clips in. Then we can set our accelerator pump in. This end with the longer end goes down. And then spring goes right over there. And you want to check for your seal right here, and then check for this seal. And this goes right over there. Alright, so hopefully that helped anyone like me that needed some help and documenting. It's just an educational video we wanted to film. I'll put a link to the ultrasonic cleaner in the description. About $40. And make sure to check out channel soon, because I'll have a motor rebuild coming soon. And yeah.